my name is Brittany New, and I'm an entrepreneur from Los Angeles, currently living in Barcelona, and I'm here with Dave hosting these miracle conversations.
Hi, Brittany. I'm Dave. As some of you out there might know, for those of you who don't, I'm an executive coach specializing in supporting CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders to develop miracle mindsets for improved effectiveness, ease, and fulfillment in their professional and personal lives. And I live in Florida.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dave, for having me on this show with you. I love getting together every month and talking about different ways that we can kind of expand our consciousness and learn different techniques that we can use in our daily lives to practice what we're learning. This year's theme is on forgiveness, and we're going to be talking about another lesson in A Course in Miracles and expanding upon that today.
Yes, I'm really enjoying our show, this show that we do together, Brittany. Thank you for hosting. It's always a lot of fun.
So today's lesson in A Course in Miracles is really exciting because how many times have you ever heard people in life talking about what the key to happiness is? That is a big question that is asked all over the world by everyone forever, for all of mankind's time that we've had. And the Course in Miracles claims to have the answer to that question, and we're going to be unpacking that today. So that is really exciting. And lesson 121 says that forgiveness is the key to happiness. And forgiveness is our theme for this series. There's many ways that forgiveness can be expressed, can manifest itself, and can be applied in our lives. So I'm very excited to hear, Dave, what your thoughts might be on how we can unlock the key to happiness by practicing forgiveness. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, great. Thank you for setting this up around lesson 121 in A Course in Miracles for us. And we typically don't give the whole lesson in the show notes or anything like that. And anyone who's interested can easily find the lessons online. You just have to do a Google search for A Course in Miracles or ACIM, and then put in the lesson, and you'll find all kinds of things coming up where you can read the lesson in more detail if you'd like. So yeah, this lesson I think has two main parts to it. The first part is a series of logical steps explaining why forgiveness is the key to happiness. And then the second part is an exercise that helps us practice how to do a certain type of forgiveness that will ostensibly usher us into the happiness this lesson is claiming that forgiveness gives. So let's do the first part of this, and then I'll check in as we go along, Brittany, to see if you have any comments or questions, and then we'll do the second part, which is the exercise. We'll talk about that. So in the first part of this lesson, I think we have the conceptual key or answer to this somewhat extraordinary claim that forgiveness is the key to happiness. Now, I've looked at this lesson many times over the 2+ decades I've been studying the Course, and in preparing for this call, I was excited that I was seeing a whole different perspective on this, right? So I was asking myself, okay, for our audience, how do you justify the claim that forgiveness is the key to happiness? Well, the way that this lesson does it, which I'd like to explore today on this show, is this way. It starts out by saying that the unforgiving mind has a number of qualities that rob us of our happiness. So, for example, the unforgiving mind is full of fear. It has no love. It is sad. It doesn't have hope about any kind of release from the pain it's suffering. And then it goes on to paint this even more, I think, elaborate picture about the problems of the unforgiving mind, that it's mostly just very paranoid, the unforgiving mind, that is, about the unconscious dangers it sees in the outside world. It's torn by doubt, it's confused, it's afraid of everything. And then it drives its point home by saying that it's actually caught, the unforgiving mind is caught in a bubble of damnation strong word, because it sees the problems of the world as sins that are permanent, basically. Sins are human wrongdoings, either in the observer or the ones that the observer is looking at, and that these sins are kind of fixed in place. They're solidly fixed. They cannot be changed, right? So
Mm.
this is the kind of the buildup about what the unforgiving mind is stuck in. And then I was like, oh wow, this is the first time I've really seen this part of this lesson. As I mentioned before, in preparing for our show, and I was like, oh, that if that's what's going on with the unforgiving mind, then to become a forgiving mind, I can already begin to see how that could lead to happiness. So let me pause here, Brittany, and see if you have any reactions or comments or questions.
Yeah, sometimes in life I come across conversations that remind me of something I saw on social media. So I actually saw a post just within the past few days, and it used the word unhealed and healed instead of unforgiving and forgiving, but it said, it just kind of had, a black square on this side and a white square on this one. And it said, an unhealed mind can take offense in anything that somebody does. And a healed mind, I don't remember the words that were used, but basically the opposite, can choose to have a good day anyway. It didn't say it like that, but some to that degree. And it's interesting how if you ever kind of encounter a person who's just really having a bad day, whether or not their experiences are, factual or legitimate from any perspective, they really just sound like such a victim, right? And that can only be healed by forgiveness. And so, does that have the potential to solve all your problems? No, but does it have the potential to turn your day around on an internal level? Absolutely. So that is, I see that dichotomy there, and forgiveness as the active tool to cross over from that, victim mentality or, just place of vulnerability to a place of strength.
Wonderful. I love that. I love how you've introduced other terms that can highlight the dichotomy too, right? Healed,
Mm-hmm.
unhealed. We could use fragmented, unfragmented. We could use whole, unwhole. We could use loving, unloving, or fearful. There are a lot of different ways to capture the dichotomy between these two aspects of the mind, uh, uh, you know, where forgiveness is at play for sure. And then the power, as you highlighted, the power to turn the day around, by understanding this dichotomy and how important it is to be choosing the one and letting go of the other, to be choosing forgiveness and to be letting go of unforgiveness. Really, really very helpful and very reinforcing of what we're up to today, I think, in the show. So, absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for that. So that's the first part of this lesson, I think, which is that it's saying that the unforgiving mind sees the pain, the problems of pain that we suffer through feeling like victims, as you mentioned, or having bad things happen to us, or perceiving that other people are doing bad things to us, or our own errors and mistakes, that the unforgiving mind feels all these things are fixed and cannot be solved. The forgiving mind has a way of releasing all this stuff, right? So we've talked about this in previous shows, that forgiveness really amounts to letting go of the grievances or attack thoughts or negative thoughts we have about ourselves, about life, about other people, about higher power. It's not about sort of giving people a pass, oh, you did something wrong to me, but I won't count it against you. That's a more traditional or conventional understanding of forgiveness. The Course is teaching a level of forgiveness which is about letting go of attack thoughts that reside inside of us, regardless of the external trigger for the pain that we experience. Right. So, having said all of this to this point, we can move a little bit then into the exercise. We're not going to do the exercise, but we can talk about it. And here again, I have a question that I'll surface at some point. I've always been puzzled by this exercise until getting ready for this show. I've loved the exercise, and I have a nickname for it, a pet name for it. I call it the triangle of light exercise. The reason I call it the triangle of light is because the exercise says for us to start out picking someone that we don't like or we have a grievance against, that we don't consider to be a friend. In other words, we consider the person to be some sort of an enemy, right? And then it says, try and see a little bit of light somewhere in the person that we're observing, and then allow this light to grow. And so one of my earlier puzzlements a few years ago with this lesson was, well, how do you see light in somebody that you don't like, that you're thinking about? I don't really get that. How do you do that? And on the call I was on at the time, the different suggestions were, well, just think of some little positive thing about the person. In other words, no matter how annoying or destructive or toxic or unpleasant the person is, or how deeply we hate them or resent them, we can find some little thing about them, something that is positive, and then we can let that positive thing just sort of expand and grow and take over our thinking about them. So, assuming that that's something that makes sense, the next part of the triangle of light exercise is to then pick somebody we consider to be a friend, somebody we like, somebody who's an ally, somebody who we feel cool with, and then to take the light from the enemy that we've grown up out around this person, who's the enemy, send it to the person that we consider to be the friend. Right? So that's going to be relatively easy. Oh, this person is shining in some way. There are a lot of things I like about this person. It's easy to like them. Okay, so then they're shining brightly with light, and then we extend the light from them to us, the person doing the exercise, right? So we started with somebody who's an enemy. We see light in them. We send the light to a friend, and then we bring the light back to us. And you can keep going around, and you can keep choosing different people. If other people are like me, there isn't going to be just one person I need to do this with. There's a whole bunch of people who are so-called enemies or people that I have had issues with way back in life, if not currently. So interesting exercise, right? And
Yeah. And I want to interrupt you for just a second. Just reading into this and maybe a slightly more relatable way. I mean, I know that if most of us are being honest, there's a good amount of people that we don't like. But maybe if you're in a position in your life where you're so fortunate to be surrounded by, mostly friends, not having too many enemies, it's quite often that someone that you do like or do consider a friend can still find their way into that enemy position. And then in that moment, you'll still have to apply this exercise. So if you think to yourself, I don't have any enemies, all my friends are pretty sound, and my family is really lovely, like you can probably still find a way to do this. It's not just the guy who cuts you off on the highway. It's like probably someone closer to you that has the potential to slide into a negative light for a moment, and you can still practice this.
that's an excellent point. That is really excellent. And you're absolutely right. It makes it more relatable because, just as you said, I mean, somebody could hear this and say, well, I don't really have, what kind of people are you that you have these enemies that you're talking about? I'm not surrounded by that. And then the way you laid it out is beautiful, because then it applies to people that we more or less love over the long haul, but who can really cause us pain, and be triggers for us episodically from time to time.
Right. Parents, right? Parents and in-laws and spouses and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very good point. I love that. Thank you, Brittany. So the question that I mentioned at the beginning of sort of unpacking the exercise a little bit, that I had a question, and my question, as I was preparing for this, and we can hash this out some together. My question was, how does seeing light in an adversary, temporary or permanent, long term or recent, as we've just talked about, how does seeing the light in somebody like that, and then extending it to somebody who's a friend, and then bringing it back to us, and maybe going around a few times, how does that relate to the conceptual stuff we just talked about regarding forgiveness being the key to happiness. I'm like, I've been wrestling with not really seeing the connection. Now, for me, when I'm on my own, I just do it and I like doing it and it makes sense to me intuitively without me being able to explain it. But I was like, we're going to have the show. Might as well try to figure out what the connection is. I mean, what's the logical connection? So as close as I think I've gotten is this, and then I'd be interested to hear your take. I think what it's getting at is this difference between essence, the essence of who we all are, and the forms that we see people in. Form would be somebody's body and how they appear as an external being, right? And the way they look physically and how they behave at the level of form. Whereas essence is sort of their truest, highest, most pure and perfect nature. And that I have it, you have it, the people that we don't like have it, the people that we like who fall into the I don't like you category temporarily, as you were talking about, we all have this essence, which is not at the level of form in terms of what we see physically in bodies and so on, and what bodies can do to one another, but is a more enduring aspect of our spiritual perfection, if you will. So when we decide to pick something that's essentially good about somebody we consider an enemy, and think of it as a form of light, we're going beyond the level of form. And then by sending it from an enemy, so-called enemy, to a friend, back to us, back to the enemy, back to the friend, and so on, we're really digging down into the essential level of freedom from our grievances and attack thoughts, right? But it's in this exercise around this triangle of light, and that's one step in the direction of entering more deeply into the type of forgiveness that will give us the happiness that this lesson is promising. So, Brittany, any reactions or thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, that explanation actually just gave me chills when you mentioned the essence and the form. I learned those terminologies from a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I probably am going to mention it multiple times through this series because I love that book. But that book also mentioned this principle that has really stuck with me, which is kind of removing worldly roles and authorities from people. And so I think it's interesting when you choose someone that you like and someone that you don't like, that can be, another version of that is maybe choose someone who you think is better than you and someone who you think is not as good as you, and neutralizing that playing field by remembering that all of us are all the same. And so, yeah, I think that what you just said about seeing the essence in everyone and choosing that distinction, like the person you don't like and the person you like, it just kind of reminds you that you and that person and the other person are all in the same field. And it really does bring a lot of peace when I go out in the world and when I engage with people and things like that, to remember that everyone is just the same, just trying to live life and do their best. And that does actually bring me a lot of peace and happiness when I deal with people, whether they're in an authority figure or what I would consider lower, people who work for me or people who I work for. It gives you peace of mind to kind of put those little things aside and just talk to them.
Well, again, beautiful extension of the thoughts here, the principles that we're grappling with, right? I love how uh, you've reflected back to me and our audience this idea of essence and form, and then even extended it to this idea of not only people you like or don't like, but people who can seem superior or inferior.
Right. Those are better words. Yeah.
Yeah, or higher or lower, however you, yeah, I mean, it's a whole nother dimension to the types of differences that can make us feel bad about or around other people, right? So sometimes if we feel consistently more advantaged than other people, we can feel guilty about that. And this would bring the forgiveness principle into play, which would equalize us. We're all have the same light. Other times we feel other people have so many more advantages than us, and that's the pits, and it can cause grievances. And then we can self-correct by bringing back an understanding of the light. And again, the thing I'll hasten to add here is that these are very powerful things to do. They're not just platitudes, things that we're saying to make us feel better. They actually lead to miracles, right? They open up doors, things happen that are completely, profoundly amazing to the benefit of all people involved when we do this process. And in some of our other shows, we'll have a chance to, I think, cover some of those lessons. The other thing I wanted to say is I have a very good friend, great buddy of mine. He loves Eckhart Tolle. So when I send this video, I'm going to say to him, I didn't bring up Eckhart Tolle. Brittany
Yeah.
brought Eckhart Tolle up, and she's into it, and she says she's going to bring it up a lot. So I want him to register how.
Definitely.
My book club here in Barcelona, we just finished A New Earth last week. So, The Power of Now last week. I just mentioned A New Earth. Yeah, I've only read those two. Maybe he's got others that are good.
Yeah, I think I've only read deeply The Power of Now because my friend mentioned it to me, and I did it on an audiobook, which was an excellent experience. But I think there are others. But so I'm gonna register this for him. I think
Wonderful.
he'll get a kick out of it. So all right, really appreciate the conversation we're having about this. It makes it richer. It makes it easier to understand for me, and I hope for our audience as well.
I think it's really nice that the Course in Miracles gave this challenge and this homework assignment, because it's one thing to read about forgiveness and, read about loving your neighbor, but it's another thing to have an actual challenge to go and practice it. So I might as well say to all of you guys watching it to try to do this exercise, do the triangle of love, and don't say we didn't tell you to do it today. So try it.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Good call to action for our audience.
Okay.
I tried to come up with an illustration, which it's not me practicing the triangle of light or love or healing, any of these things that we want to call it, as much as it is an experience of forgiveness that I think happened to me before I knew about the Course and was practicing it, and then that intensified over time as I was practicing the Course. So I'll give a quick snapshot of this, and hopefully this will be sort of a concrete example that could be helpful to others as well. So when I started graduate school in New York City to do the Ph.D. program in Psych and Religion there at Union Theological Seminary, my first few weeks, I got into a nasty spat with an administrator there.
Ooh,
I
not
just
good.
I had a really bad attitude, I'll confess. I was like, why are you even talking to me? Why are you even, this is like not my concern. Whatever it is that's your concern, I didn't say these things, but my attitude said it. I was like, I don't really care about what you're telling me. I'm not going to do anything about it. And I think it had to do with where I was parking or something like that, and but I had a really bad attitude, and we took an immediate dislike to each other. I mean, it was we didn't like each other, and or I think I didn't like him. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't as bad as I was. I'm just trying to own my side of it. But so over the next 5 or so years, I had lots of interactions with him because he was an administrator in a pretty important position. And I just, it was always somewhat neutral to full of disdain. Every interaction, it was just an issue, So anyway, 10 years later, I'm done there, moved on with my life. And then I go to a work meeting, and he's sitting at the table where we're going to be a team working together very closely. And I was like, oh, Lord, how is this going to work? I don't like him. I think I've given him enough reason not to like me. I don't know, So we started doing our process, and I was sort of a coach and consultant on this team. And I had responsibility at times for talking about forgiveness and illustrating it and discussing it in deeper and deeper ways. And over the many years we worked together, step by step, we just started to really get along, and we started to really like each other, and we started to talk, and we would use our relationship and the earlier parts of it that hadn't been so good in this team. We would use it to illustrate how you can make assumptions about people and how you can get stuck in a negative place about people. And so we had this almost like this laboratory where we would talk and laugh about our relationship and how disdainful it was and full of grievances it was from this very little insignificant interaction that we had that first year I was there, to now laughing about it, joking about it, talking about it for the rest of the team as a part of the actual work that the team was responsible for doing, which is how to build greater harmony, build stronger teams, and so on.
That must have been such a great way to demonstrate that skill. You had practiced it out, lived it out.
Yeah, and I went from being a complete, moron. I want to say moron about it, but I went from being a complete, whatever you put in, whatever word you want, just having a bad attitude towards this administrator, to just being so grateful and so joyful that we were buddies now, working on the same team. It was a miracle. It was like if you had told me even 5 years earlier that this would happen between us, I would have dismissed you. I'd have said, that's ridiculous. I almost hate him. I think he hates me. Not possible. And then somehow Spirit Source brought us together and just took the venom out,
It's really nice in this example that both of you had the mutual humility to be able to do that, because it is a little harder when one person still is very insistent on there being a problem. But that's really nice that that's really nice that the Spirit was aligning things on both sides for it to be a positive example for the whole team. So I believe that was a great thing for everyone.
You're absolutely right. It's sort of like one part of the triangle, right? This is the enemy part of the triangle becomes the friend part, and it's the same person, but it's reciprocal. It's not that one person is holding out for, because sometimes you have this with parents and children, the child might not be able to forgive and the parent wants reconciliation, or the other way around, and sometimes people go to their graves and it doesn't get resolved. Now, the Course teaches that the grave is not the end of life, and there are many more opportunities to fix this beyond what we see at the level of form as the end of this life. But I love your take on that. It's, again, very perceptive, these shadings, and I do receive what you're saying. I accept it as something that Source did for us, so there was a reciprocal and mutual kind of resolution.
I believe that Source has different intentions on how to teach us lessons, and sometimes maybe it's fine that one person doesn't want to be a part of that forgiveness process, because then the challenge becomes unconditional forgiveness rather than, oh, he's being a bit nice, so I can be nice too, So either way, it's a great learning experience, and you guys were able to form an actual friendship, which is really nice. I have a similar story also involving a teacher, and I was so excited to learn French my second year in high school. I guess I was 14 or 15 years old. And after a few weeks in the class, I really was convinced that this teacher didn't like me. And this was very unusual for me because I was always a top student, almost a teacher's pet. So I felt like I couldn't get through to this woman. And not only that, but it felt like was calling me out in front of the class. And every time I walked into that classroom, my whole demeanor changed. I became almost like the bad kid because I was just sick of being picked on, it felt like. So one day, it had been so frustrating for me that I properly acted out. I don't remember what I did or said, but it was to the point where she said, "You need to talk to me after class." And I went and I talked to her, and I didn't wait for her to talk to me. I said, "Why don't you like me?" That's what I said. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You always pick on me. You don't give me the grades that I think I deserve." And she just, with a very logical, straight face, said, I think you could use improvements in these areas, but I have nothing personally against you. And you know what, Brittany? If you're looking for a conflict, you're going to find it. And that was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that at that age. So I thought, could this be all in my head? Could I have put together small pieces of evidence to create a story that was putting me in this position? So I thought about it. We, of course, had the confrontation, went back to school after that, and she became one of my favorite teachers, I swear. So it was such a moving lesson for me. Every time I feel myself in one of those situations, I have to check in and say, is this another French teacher situation where I'm just inventing? And sometimes you're not. Sometimes people, are treating you unfairly. But I do believe in that situation, it could have been a nice learning experience with a kind woman who was able to teach me that lesson. And now I've gone on to visit France and send her postcards from France, and we still keep in touch. So it was something, yeah, that I'm very grateful for. That
That's
whole
amazing.
experience.
Yeah, that's it is quite similar
Yeah.
in sort of going from uh, grievance to a
Yeah.
miracle of relatedness and connection. And
It required just a simple well, maybe not simple. It required a profound mindset shift in order to leave this hole that I had potentially dug myself into.
you were willing to do it. You were sort of able to pause and ask yourself this question about whether you were putting the evidence together to make a case against her, or whether that was justified or not. And again, this is a lot of what the course is getting at, right? Which is that at some level, it's saying ultimately, we're never justified in making a case against somebody
Right.
when it comes to the essence of who they are, right? And
Yeah.
that these two illustrations that you and I have talked about, and again, we didn't pre-plan this with each other. These stories just came up. I planned my story, but to hear your story reinforce mine and vice versa. The thing I really wanted to say at this point is that I think that this is waiting for us. The course is talking about the fact that this type of resolution is waiting for us with every relationship we've ever had.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent, over and done with, person's passed away, it doesn't matter. This resolution is by and by going to be available in every single relationship, right? Which is part of what makes it so miraculous, which is that we can sow the seed for it using these case studies or these examples of where it's worked, and we can then intentionally hold it out for every other relationship, whether or not the other person is involved or not, by using this exercise of light and other things. So, wow. Okay, so amazing. I feel, you said chills earlier. I feel a nice warm glow. I'm like, okay. I feel really excited about what we covered here today.
Well, we've already given the audience a challenge of trying to identify some people in your life that you might want to practice this kind of forgiveness, or seeing past the form and trying to just see the inner light that everyone has. Everyone has it. Try to think of everyone was born as a little baby, and they were just an innocent little baby. And that's the kind of light that people, unfortunately, because of the world, lose because of everyone's experiences. But if you just think back to that little baby version of everyone has something that people can appreciate and love. So try to find that in everyone you meet. That's the goal, I guess.
Beautiful. I think that, again, I love your calls to action, where you remind our audience about how they can apply what we've done. And really, really loved your illustrations. They added so much texture and color to what we've talked about today. So I feel way smarter than when I was on, when I came to the call today.
Me too. Me as well. Thank you very much for breaking that down. So forgiveness is the key to happiness. We found it in this short video. It's all done now.
Yeah, well, we understand it better, and then practice makes perfect, right? So we can practice, and then we have the whole rest of the year to keep building on this theme of forgiveness as a crucial key to happiness, to miracles, to power, to fulfillment, to peace, to a lot of other things. So really appreciate you hosting this interview series for us, Brittany. Looking forward to it too.
My pleasure. All right. Well, I guess we will see you guys in the next show.
Looking forward to it.
All
Thanks,
right.
Brittany. See you
Looking
later.
forward. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.